Um, yeah, thank you so much for calling me on this platform here. Um, I was going to do a quick feelings check-in because actually when I came to the room and I was asked so politely, would you like any sort of screen share or video or how can we support you? And I literally thought to myself, oh crap, I've got none of that. And am I supposed to? And it was that less than just coming up thinking, oh my gosh, this is like a really big deal. And I just thought it was a share. Uh, so it kind of freaked out a little bit. And then as we had a silent moment, I said to myself, I prayed to my higher power and said, God, please use me as an instrument today. Use me as you will to carry your message in whatever way I need to. And then I started with the step 3 prayer. And then, after saying the first line of the step 3 prayer, the next clicker and slide that came up was the step 3 prayer. So I'd literally just said that line, and then we were all saying it together. And I was like, wow, okay, higher power, you're with me. You're with me. And it was just the most miraculous moment. And and the thing is, I've been to many meetings. I have not come across a single meeting that actually recites a step 3 prayer as part of as part of the meeting. So I say the serenity prayer most often, to be fair, like if in moments of crisis, but that's what came up. And I just thought it was such a direct message from our higher power to me. So thank you, higher power. Thank you, everyone. That was really amazing. Having had that very strong moment of faith, I of course went back into fear a bit as I saw how many audio hours had been listened to. But it's yeah, I have now a program to lean upon, which is really great. So yeah, I was asked to talk about the literature and what inspired me. And I thought um I always love hearing a little bit about the journey of how someone came to CoDA. So I was going to run a little bit through my journey and then go through the literature which really inspired me. Um, yeah, so I came to CoDA, is it coming up to 2.5 years ago? Yeah, that's right. And I came really broken, rock bottom, off the back end of an incredibly acrimonious divorce that had gone to court. And that was with the intention of, okay, quote unquote, spot the codependent. I am going to be the easiest, best wife you'll have ever divorced. I was hell bent on having the most beautiful textbook Disney divorce, which doesn't exist. Just as I was hell bent on unilaterally taking my marriage to, a Disney place of recovery when things hit really hard points. Just as I was hell bent, having even ended recovery, I wouldn't say hell bent. I was attached to the outcome of co-parenting post divorce, and yeah, I use fantasy as quite a strong tool, denial and fantasy as a strong tool to kind of keep me going against God's will and to act in my will with the backup of, but I'm doing it for the right reasons because I'm a good person and this is what a good person does and this is what the good outcome is for a good person. That's like the kind of world I create to keep me in my own will and not surrendering. Yeah, so that's how I came to CoDA. I also came with a story that was very, very black and white, which was I'm the angel, he's the devil, which of course was completely deluded as to my part in the breakdown and creation of the power dynamic in the marriage. So basically, I was completely knee deep, head deep in denial. Um, Going back to my childhood, it makes complete sense because yeah, I was quite confused when I came to CoDA because I kind of thought, well, I had the perfect upbringing. I've been given everything I've ever wanted and needed. Um, there are no addictions in my family. That's the story I came in with. Why am I here? And I concluded it's because I'm just so defective. I must be so defective to kind of be here because I've been given so much. And yet, on the other hand, it's also I'm really special and I shouldn't be here. So I had so many barriers in connecting with people within the rooms at the beginnings, as well as huge judgments. Um, you know, addicts in my world growing up were dangerous without any realization that we were addicts as a family. So I had huge black and white judgments. And so I really believe that God brought me to exactly the right place for me to gain an ounce of true humility. And that's been a really, really beautiful program. So yeah, my dad was a workaholic, a rageaholic, and my mum was an incredibly beautiful codependent. And so I learned from the best. I aspired to have a relationship just like theirs. Um, and yeah, I was brought up in a Western world because I come from an Asian background where there's a very, very strong patriarchal, man higher than woman. Man goes to work to earn the money. The woman stays at home. And I was brought up too. My mum's marriage advice was, when things started going wrong in my marriage, treat him like a god. So men really were the higher power. Um, there was a lot of invalidation around things like, I'd go out on the Indian dating scene, and anytime I doubted if this was the right guy, it would be, oh, but give him a second chance, So lots of invalidation growing up. Anyway, and that's what kind of led. I'll close there because I'll go on to the literature, but that's kind of what led me to CoDA's doors. Um, the literature I found has formed a pivotal role in part of my recovery. So it was really hard to choose which piece, if I had to choose one piece of literature, inspired me. Because as part of my daily routine, I use the Serenity Prayer and the step 1, 2, 3 prayers. And I find each and every prayer just beautiful. But especially the third step prayer. Because for me, that's the real handing over. Like I now know, because I hit unmanageability still quite a lot. And I kind of know I don't often pick it up at the whisperings. I have to still get into a bit more pain to feel that unmanageability. But I do know that unmanageability exists as opposed to this perfect, no, everything's fine. And my faith is strong. It doesn't mean I surrender everything. And I certainly don't do it immediately. But I don't feel this program would work without a spiritual basis. So the prayers are definitely something I was looking at. The promises too, the daily book of meditations, because all these things I use in my daily connection with God. The prayers, the daily meditation, and yeah. But okay, I settled on. I settled on after all the literature. This I've got it in front of me. You can probably see it's very moth-eaten. Okay, so it's the 4-page PDF you can get on the website of the codependent recovery patterns and differences. And this document to me is just gold. So I use it every single day. And that's because if I'm not formally doing a step 10, which I try and do, this is how I get to the root of my part, basically. So that's one of the ways in which I used it. So I used it in my step 4, where I did a really thorough step 4 where I took every single relationship that I felt was important, or influential in my life. And then I went through every pattern of the denial, low self-esteem, compliance, control, avoidance. I took every single pattern. I was like, okay, how have I used on this pattern in my relationship? And I put examples down of each of them. So it was a very thorough step 4. And when I'm doing my step 10 each night, not each night, okay, I have to be honest, I don't do it every night. I do it most nights, but and I'll catch up on a few days. But when I go through my step 10, or I'm feeling strong feelings, whatever it may be, I go back to this document, because whenever I'm hitting unmanageability, usually I'm playing the victim. I'm throwing my toys out the pram. Things aren't going as I want them to be. I'm really angry, sad, both. They're usually a bit of a reflection on each other, like it's they're two sides of the same coin. And I'm not seeing the truth, and I'm feeling very powerless. And what I find this does, take it to God, but when I look at myself, I can always identify how I've contributed to the relationship, how I've contributed to that situation that I'm feeling really victimhood, hopeless in. And it not only gives me the light of where I'm acting in my defects, it gives me the solution. So it's like you have the pattern right in front of you, and then under the right hand side, it's like, and this is what you do if you want to step into the light. This is what you do to act in a recovery mode. And when I'm blind in my emotion, I'm completely overwhelmed. I can't see the light. So this is what this is. It's like literally shines a torch on what I need to do. So yeah, like one of the things came up for me recently, and I hope this is still keeping to the topic, but it was that I get, oh, you think you call it alimony in America, but so we call it child maintenance over here. So it's not for the ex-spouse, like I don't, but for the children. So I have two girls, and they stay with me just over half the time. And because of that, there's some payment that the ex-husband gives. I think you call it alimony. And I was receiving alimony, of which didn't come easy. And very frequently, this alimony was used as, okay, I'm going to rephrase that because even that's a bit victim. Each time I would feel, actually the alimony, okay, it was like a chain between my husband and I was holding onto this chain thinking it gave me safety. Whereas it was a bit like keeping a lion on a chain, thinking if I've got the chain, you can't eat me. But at the same time, I can't let go, and the lion can't run wild in the jungle. I'm still bound and bonded to this lion, right? Okay, so I would frequently, it was used as kind of like as a form of threatening, it's going to be taken away. This is how it should be spent. I would just, and it got to a point where recently, so it's always kind of this thing, this reoccurring pain that I would feel in the relationship that I tried to step away from, in recognition that it wasn't safe for me. And yes, and then kind of the frequency of pain that I was feeling around this really escalated with the communication. Multiple texts a day, multiple emails. I felt because of my lack of internal boundaries, I suppose. But I have limitations as a human being, and I felt that it was like harassment. So I prayed on this a lot, like a lot. And as I was praying one morning, my higher power said to me, let this go. Let this go. Trust in me. I will keep you safe. And my answer was like, no, like a big screaming big fat, no, I'm not letting go of this money each month. And yeah, literally a couple of days before, I was like, God, please release me from the chains that still bind me to this relationship. Please release me. I'd even done a ceremony by what I call Freedom Confetti River, where I write to God and then I take it to the river and then I put it up into little pieces and I throw it in the river. And I'd actually found my wedding ring around this time. Now, my wedding ring, I asked my ex-husband not to spend any money on a diamond ring. Codependent 101 me said, don't spend money on the wedding ring. Put it into your property business and just buy me a cheap fake. So I found this cheap fake. I took it down to the river and I threw this ring in the river. And that was literally just after writing this letter. I threw the ring and I was saying no to God's guidance. And then I came down to this document and I went through the whole document. And one of the things that kind of screamed out to me was like, and I don't know where it falls under, I think it's low self-esteem, but it's like, yeah, that's it. I looked to others to provide their sense of safety. That was just one of the patterns. And it's like, with the help of my higher power, I create safety in my life. Now, tradition 7 is like, self-supporting. And along with kind of so many patterns I fell into kind of with this document, I realized loads of low self-esteem, lots of compliance, at least in the past. And I finally, I decided to let this alimony go. And I did it after lots of talking to my therapist in a way where I felt, I just don't actually want to accept this anymore. I can support myself. It's a lie that I need this money. And what it comes with, it feels like blood money. And my serenity is sacrosanct to my being. And I made that decision and let it go. And what I find is that whenever I follow any of the recovery patterns, the funny thing is, okay, the reason I use that example, and the funny thing is when it's in the light, in the spirit, like the spirit of God, the feeling I get from perhaps the same action is completely different if with a different intention. It's like if I give a gift and I'm doing it to get a gift back, the energy around that isn't so great. I don't necessarily feel so good. Now, if I had given up this alimony um, with a spirit of resentment, with I'm deserved, I'm entitled, but I have no choice. Um, I know how I'd feel because I've lived there, and yet doing this, it kind of I felt it was such an esteemable action that I don't need this anymore, and I release us from this chain. And I just felt like my chest expand, and it was a completely different feeling. Um, yeah, sorry, I just looked at another one. A hypervigilant regarding the feelings of others and take on those feelings. Now, that's a massive one for me. Um, I find those internal boundaries really hard to uphold. But the recovery pattern, I can separate my feelings from the feelings of others and allow myself to experience my feelings and others to be responsible for their feelings. When I go into a situation now where I know I'm going to be triggered, I try and envision this it's like an invisible aura around me of my highest power. And it's like golden threads, kind of just enveloping me really lightly and gently. So I'm in a bubble of love. And, that's like the spiritual aspect of boundaries for me, keeping my space mine and someone else's theirs. Yeah. So, I mean, I've really gone off on a tangent, I realize. It's like it seems to be perhaps not even about the literature, but I guess it's because every single piece of recovery for me can fall into this one document. Every single defect, every single problem, I can bring it down to something that I will have contributed, and it gives me the answer. And that's why it's such a powerful document. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm coming towards the end of my time, and I don't know if I've addressed what I was meant to do in the kind of the literature thing, but you know what, I'm really glad I didn't prep for this. I'm really glad I didn't prep and didn't do the whole perfectionistic slides that I would have done had I known that was an option. Um, I guess I just brought my heart, and the great thing about CoDA and why I'm so grateful is that I realize that's enough. Just to bring my authentic self, that's enough. So thank you so much for giving me this platform and for listening. God bless. Oh, of course. Thank you so much for asking. Um, yeah, how I tend to identify that I'm in fantasy and denial, or I'm kind of going in further into my will, is sadly pain. Like that's what I find happens. Like I truly believe my higher power does not want to bring me pain. I understand that actually, like recovery is not for the faint-hearted. It's not an easy breezy choice. There is absolute pain in taking off denial. But I don't believe that, I certainly don't have a God that sits there and concocts really painful punishments for me. So if something I'm going towards brings about real strain and pain and difficulty, and it feels like it's not going the way I want at all easily, if it's not like in the flow of life, and I'm just not coping, um, then you know what, it's not necessarily that absolutely means I'm in fantasy and denial and going the wrong way, but it's definitely a massive, okay, let's explore this. So when it comes to exploration, if I'm wondering whether I'm in denial in fantasy, the first thing is I take it to God. So I ask God to answer me with, with direction. And sometimes I feel so blinded in my emotion that the more honest I get with God with what I need, the more I feel I quickly get to the answer. So like I sometimes get on my knees and I'm like, God, I need to know, not just, I need to know within the next 48 hours. Like, I'll be really specific. I would love to know in the next 48 hours. I'm so lost that I don't need subtlety. I really need an obvious neon sign now. and and like I need it like now. So it's, I get really, really direct and really specific. And then I find that answers tend to come, and to get to those answers, they'll come in different ways. So sometimes it will be like, for example, I just shared, you know, that now about the prayer coming up on the screen, that I was saying. Sometimes it'll be like, I was deliberating over getting cats, and I was freaking out. Like, what the hell am I doing? Single mum of two. I've never had a pet. I'm getting two cats. And I was like, God, I need a neon sign. And then I meet my sister that afternoon and I say, I'm freaking out. I'm getting two cats. She said to me, you're getting two cats. I'm having a third baby. And I was like, oh, okay, God, yeah, I got that message. It's like, so I'll be really, really specific. The other thing is our outreach. So I find that the most amazing tool. So because I'm in a program where I'm so deeply respected, or at least feel it, that I don't get a direct advice, it's like I listen and gather the information, knowledge that I need to. I gain the wisdom that I need to, not through people telling me what to do, but from what's deep within my heart that I ascertain through the message of other people. So outreach is fantastic. Um, for me, clarity, I see my therapist, though I'm no longer in emergency firefighting mode, of which I was during my divorce. I see my therapist every 2 weeks for maintenance. And I find she helps me cut through things like the denial, the emotion. She like, so for example, with the alimony thing, she was like, okay, right, let's actually look at the numbers. How much you getting? How much we dissected the numbers. So that's kind of a real getting to live in reality that gets me past the delusion of, I can't afford my life without this money. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. And what other ways can I make the money which come with far less grievance and pain? Oh, okay, I can just up an hour at work every Friday. There you go, bang, problem solved. So it's like coming up with practical solutions to really cut through the denial that keep me in victimhood. Um, that helps. Yeah, I think those, and journaling. I mean, of course, journaling. It's in fact, there's a facts and feelings journaling that I find is really good. So when I'm deeply in fantasy, denial, or in pain, I do, it was something my first sponsor suggested. I write down the facts of the situation on the left-hand side, and then I write the feelings. And for some reason, there's magic in that process, because by the end, I always seem to end up with more clarity because I separate the two than when I started. So yeah, that's a really good tool as well, the facts and the feelings. It does, thank you. Okay, so the moment where that I heard God saying that to me, and it was a process connecting on this topic. So like I said, I'd been down through a river, I'd thrown away my ring, I'd written about breaking the ties between my ex and I. So it was like a conversation I was having with God that was that I wasn't able to listen up until this point, of which I was down on my knees in front of the window with this apple tree outside my window. Like, I had this place where I really connect with God at home. And I was in pain, I was crying, and it was like I was saying out loud, tell me what I need to do. And then how I heard God in that particular moment was like a whisper in my mind. And it was so not what I wanted to hear. Um, it like really wasn't. Like, it wasn't, though it was an idea that had come up at times in my mind. Like, it's almost like I'll be either doing nothing related to that topic, I'll be struggling with it, whatever. And then suddenly out of nowhere, this idea, it's like a foreign thing comes into my mind about, um, maybe you don't need this. And I'd had it before, but I just completely shoved it out because it was not what I wanted to hear. So it's like the idea had in its ethereal form been there, but this is when I heard it really clearly in my mind. It's like a whisper and a really gentle, like, trust me, I will look after you. And the reason I feel I knew it was God is because, like I said, I just didn't want to hear it. It was not my answer that I wanted. And yet it wasn't, like I said, the first time I'd heard it, but the first time I was able to open my ears to hear it clearly. And then what happened after that was the feeling was like a after the protest and the anger and the like, no, and the resistance, it was like, oh, is that what I need to consider? And it was like a sadness. It was like a grief in that way. And it happened to be just before my therapy session that I have every fortnight. And I came to my therapist. I was like, something's going on, and I'm afraid you're going to tell me to drop the alimony. And we spoke through the whole thing, and then, you know, got really clear about the reality. And then what happened was that it's like, okay, so when I first started surrendering to God, it was I surrendered really teeny tiny things, things that had I wouldn't massively have like consequences in my life. And what would happen is that every single time I surrendered tiny things, amazing outcomes would happen beyond my wildest imaginings. Or it would always be better, and I'd always feel better inside, always. So that's how kind of the practice in trusting God developed. And so that when I got this feeling that, okay, I think this is in God's will. And one of the affirmations I have every day is that in this moment, I will accept that in that perfect process of struggle, trial, and error, I will give myself the great gift of discovery. And so it's like I don't have to get it perfect. So if I feel it in my heart that this is God's direction, all I need to do is give it a go. And if it doesn't work out, God will guide me again. That's what I believe. There are no mistakes because, okay, if I mess up, which I mess up all the time, God's always waiting there. As long as I have my eyes open, my ears open, there will be another opportunity. There are no missed opportunities for where I'm meant to go. So I thought, okay, this is what I think I need to do. And it felt more esteemable than compliance. That was the thing. I was like, I think this is going to give me my freedom. What are my values here? Honesty, freedom, love, of course. Though, these are my real values, my core values. So is it in line with those? And actually, I always ask about my intentions. Okay, so is it in fear? If am I doing it or not? If am I not doing it because of fear, self-seeking, selfish, or dishonest reasons? I ask myself that. Or am I staying in the situation because of fear, self-seeking, selfish, and dishonest? So with this particular alimony thing, am I keeping the money because I'm scared? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, I'm keeping it because I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll let him off the hook. I'm scared that he will think I'm compliant. I'm scared that I won't be able to maintain my lifestyle. Complete bollocks, excuse my French, because it was hardly any money. Am I, so is it self-seeking? Yeah, because actually I want to retain a bit of control. I want to keep my hand on that chain with a line on the end. Is it selfish? Yeah, it is, because I don't want to let us free. All that is in codependency. So once I looked at my intentions, then it's too obvious that I'm living the shadows by continuing this, and then I can't deny it. So I know. Then it was like for me, I know what I need to do, and it wasn't like with a yippee doodah, party popper. It was like with grudging acceptance. And then what happened actually was that I wrote the email saying, I do not wish to accept this money anymore. Please cancel your direct debit. I do not wish to discuss this anymore. Please respect this boundary. That was it. Literally 4 sentences. And I didn't actually send it straight away. I this is quite manipulative. I I schedule sent it to send it later that day when I picked up my girls and I wouldn't have to look at my emails. And so I pressed schedule send, and literally within about 10 minutes, I received another A4 email pleading to give up this maintenance and the reasons why. And I just thought, okay, if I don't need any more reasons, God. I don't need any, I've got it. I've totally got it. And I was just like, send. And then instead of feeling like crappy and small and less than, I just felt really empowered and I felt free. I thought, God won't lead me here to then leave me in the gutter. God's by my side for life. So I've taken the courage to make the decision, and I'm just going to surrender the outcome and trust what happens. That's how it kind of felt for me. Mm.
Please.
Okay. So did I work the steps? Yes. So I attended meetings for about 6 months where I didn't frantically look for a sponsor in the beginning. I just wanted to kind of like I just wanted to see how I felt about the program. So that was 6 months. I found a sponsor in 9 months. And then my first sponsor had to leave because her life was getting unmanageable. So I found a second sponsor. No, then I had a sort of a bridge sponsor who took me through step 3. And then I found my sponsor who is my sponsor now and led me through the rest of the steps. My experience of sponsorship with all 3 sponsors, they worked very differently and were very different individuals, but I had a really, really positive experience with all of them. The way that I found it, it's a little bit like dating. You just got to keep knocking those doors. Actually, I'm really not the best person to ask about dating, but it's just if you. I just found if when I had the willingness that I was like, I really want to do the steps. I It's like about just right. Who do I? And this is how I did it. Who do I energetically connect with? Do do they inspire me in some way? Do I want a little bit of what they've got? If the answer is yes, just ask. If I think for me it was I needed to take those steps. It's not like in this program, sponsors don't come to you, oh, would you like me to sponsor? You have to, in my experience, it's a willingness to approach somebody, which is part of getting out of that zone of discomfort, getting into the zone of discomfort. So I just asked and asked, but I do also believe that when the student is ready, the teacher comes thing, because I didn't have to ask that much, actually. Um, I think if there's real willingness there, that can also be picked up. So when I'm in the right place, I'll find the next person to take me on the next step of the journey. Yeah, that's how I found my sponsor. I actually found her as well at a really, really big meeting. So I don't know how many, this sounds like it would be a big meeting on some weeks. There's a meeting on a Saturday night in England, which is a bit like the equivalent of this one, that would have like 45-minute shares with one person who had reached at least till step 9. So yeah, they were along the program some way, and they would share for 45 minutes, and there's about 100 people in the meeting. It's like a big meeting. So those big meetings, I find that it can present quite a few people essentially. So the more people you expose yourself to, a bit like speed dating. Yeah, I'm making lots of dating analogies now. But the more people you expose yourself to, the more meetings you go to, the more you can get an idea of also what you're looking for in a sponsor, and you can approach more people. Yeah, that's what I think would be a good, that's a good place to start. Yes, I do inner child work. And so the inner child work I do is that I have on my shrine a photograph of me as a child. And I've realized actually on a recent workshop I went on a CoDA workshop, I don't have as great a relationship. I haven't got to know my teenager as well. So I have put on my list to get from my mum's house a photograph of when I was a teenager. But when it comes to my inner child, I speak to her in the mirror. So I do mirror work each day, and actually, in fact, okay, that's another way in which I use this document. So when I do mirror work, I do affirmations, and I find that whichever pattern is sticky, like I'm still using on a particular pattern, like interestingly, the shame and blame one is a big one for me. What I'll do is I'll use the recovery pattern as an affirmation, and I'll say it in the mirror. So, I do not need to shame and blame to manipulate outcomes. I will be open and honest. I think it's direct and honest um, with what I need, and trust the outcome to my higher power. I do not need to shame and blame to manipulate outcomes. That's it. There's another one that I've been using recently, which is as an affirmation, which is um, I trust the I value the opinion of those I trust without needing to gain their approval. I have confidence in myself. That's another one that I've been using. So it's like it can be a real antidote to whatever defect is sticky. So I'll do that in the mirror. And then with my inner child, I'll actually really talk to her. And often when I've hurt my inner child, when I've hurt myself, so I have a God box, which is what the one that I, write to God. Go. I actually take them both to the river, to be fair, and then read them and then release them. But I also have an amends jar. So in my pottery class, I made this jar, and I kind of intently did it really imperfect, if that makes sense. It's like I just splattered it with paint. I didn't do detailed stuff. It was like, this is my let go jar. And so I have an amends jar. And when I talk to my inner child, when I've hurt her in particular, I say this is not CoDA actually, so just kind of a heads up, but I use the Honopopo healing affirmation. I think it's the mantra. So it's like, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you. And I leaned forward just then because I actually touched my forehead to the mirror and I really envision my child and I speak to her in the way that I would have loved to be spoken to when I was a child. Like, so I'm really loving to her. I'm not saying I practice this every day. I can be my own worst critic for sure. But it's like when I'm in that space, I'll be like, I love you. I am so proud of you. Like, especially if I've done something big like this, I'll go to my mirror and I'll go to my child and I'll be like, do you know how brave you were? And I'll speak to them as if it was my daughter, because I'll speak to my daughters this way, but I've found it's been a real journey to speak to myself that way. I could speak to them. I'd never, openly criticize them in the way that I would speak to myself, my critical parent. So I'll do that with my inner child. And actually, what I'll do as well is I do something that comes from actually a self-compassion. It's led by, I don't know how much, I don't know if I'm supposed to mention things outside CoDA, but okay, there's a self-compassion ritual where when I'm really in pain, and my inner child needs love, I'm very tactile. So that's one of my kind of love languages. Now, to give myself a hug, this looks pretty crazy if you're out in the public world, but I'll give myself a hug and I'll tend to do this and I'll really hold my face and I'll stroke my face and I'll touch my heart and I'll say, I love you. You got this. You got this. And like I said, it looks pretty crazy. And I'll sometimes yeah, I'll definitely do it in front of my daughters. And but yeah, I'm willing to look crazy to give myself a bit of love. So yeah, that's what I do in terms of my inner child work. But I'm getting to know my teenager still. And yeah, she needs lots of love. So there's work to do there. Oh, thank you for sharing and the bravery to do that. There's actually a leaflet or a pamphlet called Making Decisions, if I'm not wrong. So in terms of CoDA literature, that's very relevant. But yeah, there is actually a leaflet that is really helpful. So that's one of the things that can be drawn upon. And I suppose all I can do is kind of go through my own decision-making process, but I really identify with still the question which I kind of heard underneath that, which is, how can I tell whether it's my will or God's will? And at the beginning, before I find it easier now. At the very beginning of my recovery, I had not a clue. I had no idea to tell the difference between my will and God's will. And it's not like I have all the answers now. As you've heard, I can go through a really painful process of denial and fantasy and you name it, before I can get some answers. And even then, when I make decisions, not entirely know. It's, I mean, I think that's what it's taking a leap of blind faith sometimes. But the way that I get to decision making is how I explained, which is asking myself the intentions, and that can get really clear on on my motivations behind it. Outreach, journaling, yeah, facts and feelings, going to those patterns. And actually, I think, what's really, really helpful, not making decisions when I'm really emotional. So that can sometimes be hard because I mean, I made the decision to divorce when I was really, really emotional. But it was absolutely the right one. Like I know in terms of, my higher power directing me. So it's not so black and white, but I find that it's now that I'm more in touch with my feelings, and I have a strong connection with higher power that I input in daily. It's the feelings that tend to give me feedback as to whether I'm in God's will or my will. Because once I've made the difficult decision, good stuff tends to transpire out of it, and I get feedback from the world. So I suppose one of the first things in which to start is to get really, really familiar with my feelings on a daily basis. So actually sit every single day and sit and meditate and just ask myself, what am I feeling? I mean, one of my questions on my step 4, the first one is, what feelings have come up today? It's like really basic, but before I didn't know what I felt. I thought I knew what I felt I should feel. I couldn't name the feelings. I certainly couldn't feel them at the time. I'd feel them retrospect. Like I'd go back and think, oh, actually, I was feeling scared then. Didn't even recognize it. So really get in touch with my body and how my body is feeling things, and that would be one of the first steps. And then just waiting and listening to guidance, and remembering that I don't need to make a decision yet. That very little in life requires immediate action. That's what I've discovered. Very, very little in life. So I can always afford to pause. And the pause is an incredible tool just to slow things right down, because then it can get peaceful so that I can hear God's message. Yeah, I hope that's helped.
My name's John, and I'm codependent. I'm not sure when we met. When I first got into CoDA, trying to stay somewhat sane, I was doing 13 meetings a week. So it's really hard to say. I was quite insane when I arrived here. So, that hasn't changed a lot, but hopefully it's looking better today. So the pamphlet that I have decided to share is one that's not available for download. So I had to kind of copy and paste it into Word so I could share it with people today. And I guess before we get started, as I do whenever I'm looking at doing some service work and I'm a little nervous. When I first got into recovery, let's start there. When I first got into recovery, was in another program, and I found myself at a detox facility. And I remember it like it was yesterday. They let me outside into a basketball court area that was not someplace you could escape from. And they let me outside to have a cigarette because at the time I smoked. And I knew I had reached a bottom there, a very hard bottom, a very painful bottom. I had complete demoralization, as we say. And I knew the God that I grew up with, the prayers that I had from that God that I grew up with just wouldn't serve me well, because it was not a very loving God that I grew up with. And so I kind of made up my own prayer in the moment. And that was actually for 4/12/2010, when I started my recovery journey in that other program. And the prayer that I came up with, I don't know where it came from, but it was cold and the sun was shining. And I just looked up and I said, you whose rays illuminate the whole world, illuminate also my heart so that it too may do your will. And I have used that prayer, that first prayer, for all of my recovery journey. And any time that I go to do any kind of service, or anytime I'm feeling a little bit out of myself. And that allows me to give up responsibility to my higher power. And so, hopefully he'll have something good for us today, or him, her, whatever it is. So anyway, the brochure that I have is Carrying the Message. I'm going to share a screen real quick on that document, and maybe I could get some people to help me read it. So we have a little bit of group participation. I'd really appreciate it. If you'd like to help read, just please raise your hand. So this is carrying the message. I'd like to go through this real quickly because it's been very helpful in my recovery carrying the message, and I'll share a little bit more on that after we finish with this. So I'll go ahead and start, and then if we get some hands up, I'll say pass. So in the beginning of this, it says, is it codependence or is it service? One CoDA member described the difference between being of service and functioning codependently in this way. The codependence, if I don't do it, it won't get done right. The entire burden is on me again. Well, that sounds like a martyr. Service, I am doing my part within the group as each person is doing her or his part. God is in charge, not me. In this pamphlet, we will reflect on some of the concerns we all share in our recovery from codependence, the dilemma of when to say no, or when and how to accept a responsibility or to make a commitment. We will also offer some solutions and methods suggested by many of our fellow members from a variety of CoDA groups. Perhaps the first solution is to ask the higher power of our own understanding for guidance so that the way we approach service is right for each of us as individuals. If we choose to view being of service in a new way, we might see it as an opportunity to transform our thinking about helping, about giving, and about doing. And I'll pass, Jackie. Okay, thank you all for helping me read that. Um, this document has been pretty important to me. And well, a little more background. The first time I was in service, actually, since I've been in CoDA, I've started to, and therapy, I started to recognize how synchronistic my journey has been. And I'm sure other people have noticed that as well. And, seems like every important part of it carries a lot of pain. It's always had to contain some pain for me to open my eyes. But I think that my higher power just led me along the way to be of service, not for my own benefit, other than benefiting me in my recovery, making it tolerable, giving me direction. And the first opportunity I received was in the first week of treatment center. I went to a treatment center for 3 months for other things and for my alcoholism. And the first week in recovery, there was a group meeting, a speaker meeting, and they asked me to speak. And I said, what? I've only been sober, less than a week. What can I possibly share uh, in my recovery that would be of value to anyone? And I remember the guy telling me, some of the people here haven't been sober more than 24 hours. And so anything you can share of how you stayed sober for a week would be valuable to them. And so that was my first kick into sharing a little bit. So, but the synchronicity in that, I believe now I see as some training that I had. There was close to 60 or 80 people in that deal, and they actually made you get up in front of everybody at a podium and do your thing. So the first synchronicity that I recognize in that is that for business reasons, I attended a class and it taught me how to speak in large groups without losing my shit, without getting all freaked out. And and it was a really easy technique just to either look over people's shoulders or look just above their head, and it looks like you're looking at them in the eyes. At the same time, you're not. So you can pretend you're not really up there in front of all those people. And so other things that I did, I'm going to start my timer here. I don't want to take too much time. So other things that I did when I was, after I got out of that treatment center, and as God would have it, my higher power would have it, the first meeting that I found became my home group. And it was an 11-step meeting. So it included prayer and meditation. I wasn't very spiritual at the time, and I had a lot of guilt and shame around my behaviors in the past. So that was really good for me, helped me find a higher power of my understanding. The first sponsor that I had and still have asked me to, before I even had a year in recovery, asked me to help a guy out that had cancer. He was taking meetings into a treatment center and once a week, and he needed some help because he was having problems with chemo and not able to do it a lot of the time. That first meeting that I went to, I found out that it wasn't actually an AA meeting. It was a CA meeting, Cocaine Anonymous, and I was okay with that. I just called it a catch-all meeting. Because in my experience, my addictions can be anything, people, places, things. So that was another one for me. And it's not always easy to do service. I've found that in my recovery that my higher power helps me to find a balance in things. So when I first, my first year in CoDA, I actually got to speak. He asked me to speak on my first year in CoDA. I made a lot of, I've listened to that recording on YouTube since, and I recognized a lot of errors I made in telling my story, but that's okay. So the synchronicity in it. Um, when I hit bottom in CoDA, it was in my codependence, it was almost exactly 10 years in my recovery. I had gone through a divorce, and and I, after 19 years, and found it kind of awkward getting back into the dating pool. So I worked my marriage around the 12 steps, and started going to the gym, got a new house, away from my ex-wife, and I was happy, joyous, and free. And I started dating, and it became fairly clear within just a couple of years that my life had become unmanageable again. And that last relationship, they were all dumpster fires, but that last one was horrific. And I hit bottom yet again in another way. So I started doing therapy, and the amazing thing in the synchronicity is I was doing therapy for PTSD in my past, and I started doing CoDA meetings by being recommended by my therapist, and everything got very synchronetic, and if that is actually a word. Anyway, where's I going with that? So okay, I lost it, but anyway, oh, I know what it was. So I started losing sponsees in the other program. I had two active sponsees at the time when I hit bottom in my codependence, and they both went out. And they found, I guess, hopefully they found new sponsors, but I was able to find that balance there. Now I could commit to CoDA almost full time. And that was another synchronistic part of my recovery. As it turns out, some of the people that I was meeting with in CoDA, um, it was um, it was just before COVID started, and they decided to start a group because we didn't have an in-person home group, and Zoom wasn't a thing, not that much of a thing at the time. So we started a new meeting in El Mirage, which is in Arizona, close to my house and theirs. So we had a new home group started, and they all decided to drop out of that meeting, but I kept it going. I wanted a home group that I could call my own. And so that meeting's been going for 3 years now. Uh, got about 10 regular members there. But also during that time, um, I started doing less meetings. When I got to CoDA first, and when I first got to CoDA, I was doing 13 meetings a week. And it helped me to stay, the fellowship and the people in CoDA helped me to stay somewhat sane. And as I started getting better, I started cutting back on my meetings to get more balance. Um, so as I got more into my recovery, I got down to 6 meetings a week. What that looks like is I was doing 5 meetings a week uh, altogether between my therapist, AA. I did one AA meeting a week and 4 CoDAs, or 3 CoDAs. And then I got a phone call. Someone found my name on a meeting list and wanted to get in touch with H&I in CoDA, which is hospitals and institutions. And then I tried to research that and found that it wasn't really active at this time. So I volunteered, my higher power had me volunteer to take meetings into that institution, into that recovery facility. And it was amazing. Taking CoDA meetings was such a reward. I really got everybody, everybody that attended those meetings, not my doing, my higher powers doing, could identify and participate in those meetings. And there's nothing, I've found nothing more rewarding than to be in those meetings and see someone's eyes light up on the other side of the table. Someone in the meeting, their eyes light up. almost all the time. And they have a bit of hope that comes into it. So some of the benefits of doing that kind of service work or any kind of service work that I've found is, especially that kind of service work, it keeps it fresh for me. It keeps that codependent crash, um, sharing that with others. I'm able to see my recovery happen. I'm able to keep it fresh to remind me why I am here and why I am recovering in my codependence. It just reiterates that for me. Um, so it brought me back. It brought me back to 6 meetings a week. I'm not sure my math is right there, but whatever. Um, as my higher power would have it, that ended. You know, they did a restructure of that recovery facility, and they said, you know, if they wanted me back, they'd call me, and they never contacted me again. So it was then I was asked to be a part of the Arizona Events Committee and help with that. And so my higher power has been putting these things in my path to keep balance for me, but also to give me new experiences. In these experiences, I get to practice my codependent recovery. And because I'm not that, I was never that outgoing, let's say. I had always had a lot of masks going on to please people and to be accepted, because if you knew me, you wouldn't like me. You know, that was, I always compared my insides to other people's outsides. And I always fell short. In CoDA, I'm learning to be more equal. I'm neither better nor less than anyone else. Sometimes I lose sight of that, but I'm always reminded, usually in a painful way, because that's how you get my attention. So I was back to 6 meetings a week. Let's see. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot more to share unless there are some questions. I do have. We read some of the um, benefits of doing service work and carrying the message. There have been a lot of ways that I've been offered to do that. Some of them I've had to say no. My first year in CoDA, I was asked to do some service in the Arizona Events Committee, but in my gut, I felt that that I would be out of balance with that because I was still working at the time and working a lot of hours. I wanted to concentrate more on my recovery. Since I've been in CoDA, it's gotten better. It's gotten a lot better. So what I'd like to leave you with is maybe some questions to think about and respond on. And I came up with a couple. The first one is, how has your higher power prepared you to carry the message? Or what service work are you currently providing and the rewards you're receiving from that? And service work for me and others in the program, in any program, I believe starts with just being able to participate in meetings, participate in the seven tradition. It sets an example for others. It lets them see that it's okay. Just speaking in meetings, sharing yourself in meetings, becoming more vulnerable, leads it as an example for others that are nervous or have anxiety around it. So anyway, my two questions: how has your higher power prepared you to carry the message? Or what service work are you currently providing and the rewards that you're receiving from that in your recovery? And with that, I'll pass. Thank you.